Okay, I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, July 20th, 21 Sebring Council meeting. Call to order. First part of business will be the invocation. Mayor, thank you.
Please stand with me. Lord, thank you once again for a beautiful city that we live in. We appreciate all you have given us. We ask you tonight to watch over our staff, our council, all of our first responders, protect them. We ask you to lay your healing hands on Leonard Carlisle as he gets put back together and gets healthy again. We ask that you watch over us tonight and help the council make sound and right decisions. We do all we do in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Shute.
Here.
Carlisle. Detman.
Present.
Lawrence.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Ivy.
Here. Announcement to the audience, if you have any business with the City Council tonight, if you'll see the clerk and fill out a paper there saying you want to speak on some on item, we'd appreciate it. Mayor's report.
Just a few things. Last weekend, if you all were down by the lake and saw the motor surf and motor skate, it's a different sport. It's really kind of interesting. Got to talk to the guy, the young man that's pretty much started the program back in 2014. He developed the board itself. He and his buddies built those boards, and now they're racing. Started really heavy in 2019, but the races were kind of down because of COVID. It's a very big international sport, but we're the third race in United States that they put on. So it's big over there. But we had 8 countries that were represented that came to race in that race, so it was pretty cool. The skateboard race, if you all ever want to race a skateboard at 30 miles an hour in pavement, go ahead. Because they took a few spills the other day, and they had a lot of ice packs and Band-Aids from the fire department. We have also had the Bonneville wrestling in town at the same time. Thanks a lot to Casey Hart for what she does through Visit Sebring and bringing these events here, and Joe Lamp with his organization that kind of organizes it. But a lot of folks that got to see Sebring this weekend in Highlands County, so and enjoy it. The one gentleman from the Czech Republic, when I asked him about Sebring, he said I told his dad about Sebring. He said, my dad just went AWOL. He said, because he's followed the 12 hours of Sebring for years and years and years, and really said, you don't realize how big that race is overseas and the people that do it. So it was really kind of cool. We have a couple of Sebring ball teams going to the Nationals for I guess the World Series, you call it, the AAA, and I believe the Ozone are going to the Nationals or the World Series. So if you all want to donate and help them go, it costs a lot of money to put those kids up there, but they really show Sebring as a great event. Lastly, on 7/31 from 10 to 3, there's a cleanup on MLK Boulevard. It's open to the public to help kind of clean up some areas, do some pressure cleaning, just trash pickup and all kinds of stuff, and help out the community as they're trying to help themselves bring that up to a better stand. So that's 7/31 from 10 to 3. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Council members' concerns? Councilman Stewart?
No report.
No report?
No report.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
If you could, I'd like to pull E just for further information.
Okay. Pull E. Anyone else on the consent agenda?
No, just the addition on the meetings on 8B. We might want to include that tomorrow, 7/21 at 9 a.m. is the Health Insurance Committee meeting here in Council Chambers, 9 a.m.
Okay. So I can take that as a amendment to that one, and we'll go ahead and vote for the
Absolutely.
rest of the.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda without E as presented.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion, a second. Madam Clerk.
Cardile, oh, I'm sorry, Detman,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes. Okay, E. Mr. Lawrence.
Sure. I just had a couple questions on that, Mr. Bogus,
Yes, sir.
if you would. I guess the first one I want to kind of ask how long, and I guess this one, paint job, has been on there for 18 years, and how long
Yes.
do we expect these? Is that a normal time?
Well, Charlie, that is a little bit long.
Uh-huh.
Normally, we try to get them painted shorter period of time. The longer you let it go, the more rust forms, as you might figure. This one, we've had in works, and for some reason it just didn't get done. We did coat it, interior coating was done a year ago.
Right.
You may recall that, we had change order on that. They found some things we had to repair that we weren't expecting repaired. But this one's also got the cell phone antennas on it.
All right.
And that too kind of complicates the issue some, trying to work it around their schedule. They're always upgrading their equipment, it seems like. In fact, I've got 2 emails right now. I've just responded to both T-Mobile and Verizon both want to upgrade their equipment again.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of complicates the structure or scheduling, painting. These are very specialized companies that do this kind of work, so trying to get quotes from them in a timely manner is sometimes a little difficult as well. But,
Does the fact that we have the cell phone equipment up there, does that shorten the life of those paint jobs?
I don't know that I could go as far as say it shortens the life of the paint job. It certainly makes paint job more difficult.
Uh-huh.
You have more stuff to work around.
Right.
The way they attach some of this stuff, that kind of adds a little bit to the rust.
Yeah. And then I presume we have pretty good revenue from that.
We have revenue. I don't know that I would say good revenue. I would certainly want more, but
Won't pay for the painting.
Yeah, well, yeah, will it pay for the painting, or?
will not do that, I don't believe.
Okay, and then one more question about that, I guess. I 4 or 5 years ago, when I toured with you the different
Mhm.
facilities,
Yes.
I think you had mentioned that the water towers are going out of style, and there's some kind of a large pressure valve of some sort that will replace them. Does this water tower have a very long life to go before we replace it with that type of valve, or how's that gonna work?
Well, this plant is undergoing, as we speak, an upgrade to VFD controls. The VFD is variable frequency drive. That controls your high-speed service pumps, which controls pressure on the system. So once this plant is fully converted, the tank technically would not be needed at that point. But to answer your question, is the tank going to be around for, it all matters how well you want to, if you want to spend the money to keep it up. Now, once we get the external painting done and any repairs that may be found that need to be done, the tank will probably basically be in good shape for at least 10 years. At least I would expect it to be in good shape for 10 years.
Okay, and at that point, are we considering taking it down, or what are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
here again, the wireless companies, we've got some long-term contracts with them that we may have to try to see if we can get out, if council doesn't want to spend the money to maintain the tank.
Yeah. So that's something I think we as council should take a look at on the quote-unquote long-term contracts, and maybe not enter into any of those that might come back and bite us at some point.
I think the last one council approved was a T-Mobile contract, and I believe that was a 30-year contract.
Wow. Yeah.
That might also bring a situation where if we're ready to take it down, we can enter into an agreement with them. They could place a tower there, a new tower, to facilitate whatever their needs are and create some additional revenue for the city.
And then, I guess one more question on the one that's on the highway, the water tank that's there. What kind of shape's that one in?
Well, that's, when we get into the budget workshops, you'll see that as being a budget item for this coming year.
Okay, and
It's not, I inspect these things with a drone. That one is it's just the paint's dull and we've got some staining that occurred for some reason. But it's pretty good structural sound. But the tank that we have here we're trying to paint is probably if you had to say which is the worst, this is the worst.
uh-huh. And the price on that one, in your guesstimation, about the same maybe, or?
It's a little bit larger tank,
Uh-huh.
so I'm sure the price will be more. simply because the amount of paint's gonna be required.
Okay. I want to bring up something that Scott and I were discussing with the golf course when we were over there. This is going to sound a little crazy if you haven't heard about this idea before. But we're trying to get attention to the golf course to make it maybe a little bit, a little more viable, if you will, making a little more money or losing a little less. And the idea came up to paint that tower to make it look like a golf ball and a tee. And that would get everybody to know where our golf course is, our municipal course. So just want to throw that out there, and I'm sure we'll have some discussions on it along the way. It would certainly also, put Sebring on the map a little bit for people passing by. It's not just Sebring, it's the big golf ball. So, as if we're coming up to painting that, I would like to at least discuss that idea.
Sure.
And maybe get some attention to the golf course. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Bob, one other question, if you don't mind. I want to make sure that in the contract, the city attorney's office does have a liability clause in there, so that if there's any overspray or anything as a result of the painting of that onto other area cars or whatever, I've seen that happen, that we're not held responsible. They are.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll make a motion.
Well, okay, make a motion. Second, anyone?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Second, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion, council? Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Devon,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes. Okay, old business, I see none there. Bob?
Again.
We had new business, we've had diversified CPC sublease proposal at Sebring Airport wastewater treatment plant property. That's a mouthful, okay. Bob, you got the show here.
Yes, sir. Staff received a proposal from Robert Scott, and Mr. Scott is in the audience. He has a PowerPoint presentation he'd like to show council after I get through the agenda item summary. But what they're wanting to do is sublease a small portion of the property that the wastewater treatment plant resides on. For that, he's willing to pay the council, city, $250 a month, plus take care of mowing expenses for the wastewater treatment site itself. We did check in on that, and right now with the current mowing contract we have, it runs about $60 a month. So that's part of what he's also looking to compensate council for. My concern was, will we need it for anything, and do we have any infrastructure on it currently? And the answer to both those questions is no. We don't expect any need for that, nor do we have any infrastructure in there. So, from a standpoint, if council should want to enter into a sublease agreement with Mr. Scott's company, staff would have no concerns with that.
Is there a time frame on this?
I believe they would like to get it as soon as possible.
Well, I mean,
Know how long
is it gonna be 30 years?
Oh, we haven't discussed that.
Obviously,
year.
I don't think we're gonna go for that, so.
Yeah, no.
Is there gonna be a clause in case we need this property, that there'll be kind of a, I don't wanna call it a kick-out clause, but something to say if we do need it for some reason,
Sure.
do they have a year or
Sure,
6
whatever.
months or
Sure.
vacation?
Sure, we could get our attorney to write up a contract that would provide.
Are they
that
going
kind
to
of-
improve the parking lot, or
Pardon me, sir?
are they going to make improvements to it, or?
They're
leave it
actually
as is?
planning to asphalt it because they plan to park tanker trailers on it. So it will be, had a little concern about where the stormwater would run. That area gets wet pretty quick when we have a lot of rain, but they're gonna slope it where it takes the water away from our treatment plant. So, that took care of that concern.
We have to get Swiftman involved, or?
Well, whenever you pave anything, I'm sure Swiftwood wants to know about it.
That'd just be a concern if you're.
There are engineers also here too, so I'm
Yeah.
sure they've already checked that out.
He's coming up
He's
behind you.
coming up behind you.
Okay. All right, well, I'll turn it over to the other folks then.
Steve Dobbs, 209 Second Street, Northeast Second Street, Okeechobee, Florida. I'm the engineer for Diversified CPC. Yes, we will have to modify the existing water management district permit to add this into what's there. All of the water that's going to come off of this, the additional impervious, will go back into their system. They have an existing dry retention area. and all that water will be directed into that, not onto the wastewater plant property. So I just wanted to clarify that real quick, and I'll let Mr. Scott do his proposal.
Yes, Robert Scott, 441 Webster Turn Drive, Sebring, Florida. That's the address to the facility next to your wastewater treatment plant. Can you hear me? Okay, I have this little presentation I put together because we didn't really do any kind of a formal, we're here, presentation for anybody, so I'd like to kind of give a little bit of a preview of what we have and what we've done. I've been with Diversified since 1987, and I built plants all over the United States and even one in Shanghai, China. So this is my forte, is building these gas plants. So let me begin with this. We've got a 2,000-acre commerce park, also including regional airport with a designated foreign trade zone, as well as other logistic and economic benefits that make an excellent location for Diversified CPC International. I'll go ahead and change it. We did some research. We were going to buy property, and we ended up here in Sebring, mainly due to Mike Willingham. He was very instrumental in getting us through the process of getting the lease. We have a 25-year lease. So some of your questions about the parking lot would be 25-year lease, starting from the date of our lease to the 25 years end date. So we would want that parking lot to be included in our lease. Originally, when we started this program here at the airport, Atkins Engineering got involved, and we wanted the whole entire area. That included the area by the gray water tank, including the area where we ended up leasing from the airport for the, what do they call it, the retention pond.
Yeah.
So that area that's next to your gray water tank is right here, obviously, you can see it. And this is the area that I want to add the equipment for parking. The area is right to the swell. It will be improved to prevent any rainwater from the parking lot runoff to the wastewater treatment plant. The view that you're looking at is actually from our property. The fenced area right there off of the gray water tank, that is your discharge, and that's the discharge pump that go out into the airport. And we see this quite a bit, because I go there every day. So next slide, please. Our Sebring facility currently distributes pre-blended NP46, A31 isobutane, 152A, and we are now in the process of actually putting in another tank from our facility from Petaluma, Mississippi. That tank is a 30,000 gallon tank, and that would make 3 tanks for us at this particular time. These are the 2 tanks that are there presently. Those tanks were actually moved from Miami. And the Diversified has been doing we've been sending out ISO containers to South America and to Barbados, and so we've been doing an export business out of Miami. First, we were doing it out of Homestead, and after that lease ran out, we moved to Miami, and we did a 10-year lease there, and with SunGas, and they wanted the property back, so we had to move. So my company said, well, let's just buy some property. So that's how I met Steve Dobbs in Okeechobee, and we spent a year trying to do the same thing in Okeechobee, and we failed to launch, so to speak. So we had some political issues and some personality issues besides Steve and I. So we ended up coming here at more or less in an emergency because the plant had to be moved. We put in, go ahead, next slide, please, Scott. Our 4-acre site includes the existing 6,000 square foot office building, warehouse, a tank farm, 850 feet of railroad track, and 70-foot truck scale. The 850 feet of railroad track, Steve and I engineered and put that in with the help of obviously TAL and some other engineering companies and so on and so forth. That gives us our access to the main line. And we have presently 4 risers that we unload railroad cars, pre-blended railroad cars, and truck scale, we just recently put that in. That's how we measure and weigh all of our transports through that truck scale. So next slide, please. The Sebring Commerce Park is an ideal location to service our Florida customers as well as export to the Caribbean and South American markets. One of our good customers is in Okeechobee, and they make the dusters, the computer dusters. It's called Ecotech, and they're buying a fairly large sum of 152A, refrigerant 152A. And I don't know if you're familiar with refrigerant 152A, but it is it's from the family of the refrigerants, but it's not it's ozone friendly. So it's the newest aerosol propellant. They also use it for the blowing, for your dusters and what have you. So next slide, please. Let's see. The Sebring Terminal has rail access in an uncongested area, close proximity. I can't say it right now. The major highway linking Orlando, Tampa, Fort Myers, West Palm Beach, and Miami. I had a meeting with the state before we actually got set here, the state DOT. I went to a meeting out at the college, and one of the things that they were trying to do is they were trying to develop 27 to be a major hub and take away some of the traffic off of 95 and some of the bigger routes where all the cars go. So, having that meeting with them and, discussing what our plans were, Sebring seemed to be a very good location for our business. They really, the DOT really likes Sebring a lot, and they like the way that the 27 travels all the way from north to south. And the only problem we have is actually when you actually get through the city. So because people like to zoom through that, and that's a real problem. But it has made our transportation a little bit more expensive coming to Sebring, because we were before running up and down 95 and because we have to go to the ports. We go to the port, we deliver our gases up to let's see, what is it, Jacksonville, and then they come into Jacksonville and then they go out Miami. So that's one group of gases that go out that way, and the other one comes into West Palm Beach, and it comes into West Palm and it goes back to West Palm. So we're a very good exporter and have been a very good exporter for the state of Florida for quite some time now, and we're only hoping to increase that export if we can. The truck traffic is what we're talking about for the parking lot. Those are MC331s and MC330s. Those are high pressure vessels made for LP gas and anhydrous ammonia and refrigerant gases. They're some of the safest transportation vessels on the market, and they've been used for over 50 years. I'm very well aware of them because we have some really old ones. So they get a regular test. The ISO containers get tested every 2.5 years and every 5 years, so that they test the integrity of the unit itself, because they're always picking them up and putting them on barges. The trailers are tested every 5 years and every 1 year. So every year they get a leak test and all the other tests, and every 5 years they do a hydro test. So that just, the integrity is there. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Okay. Our investment in Sebring manufacturing facility is a clear demonstration of our commitment to Sebring community and the continuous improvement to supply a superior product that is high in purity, environmentally safe, and all this information will be on our website. So if you ever want to look up Diversified CPC International, it'll show basically all of our locations in the United States. And our home office is up in Illinois, and that's where I used to live many years ago. And I work directly with the corporation as a project engineer. So I'm very familiar with all the different ways to fractionate, to move gases and change gases and blend gases. So we're very proud to be here in Sebring. I have hired 3 Sebring employees. 2 of them were from Genpact, and they're excellent men. And my truck driver is from Sebring as well. We are planning on hiring only, and I can't say this as 100%, but I'm really strongly planning on hiring only Sebring employees. It's hard to find the kind of employees we need, so everybody has to be trained from day one till they can do what they need to do. When Genpact finally closed down, we were getting into a process of bringing in product to be able to sell them their blowing agent. And I knew Genpact for many years, before it was Linpack. I did a lot of their drawings, their isometric drawings, and some of their process and instrumentation drawings. And we actually installed the tank many years ago when it was Linpack. So that tank now is sitting in our yard, and it's gonna be taken down to Okeechobee to be able to fill it with the 152A, so they can make their dusters. We're very environmentally safe and very proud to be here in Sebring, and I hope you accept my apologies for being nervous in front of this group, because you are the peers of this community, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, please. How many tanks are you gonna have out there?
At this time, we're gonna have 3. I would like to have approximately 9 tanks total. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 9 tanks total. That's why I brought Steve here. We took this property and it was dirt. And actually, when we got it, it had all the trash from the hurricane and many flat tires. But we developed this whole entire project, Steve and I did, with some help from others. We put in the new water main, fire protection, new
The rail, the
asphalt rail. I'm putting in a generator now for the plant itself to make sure that we can get the gas moving, keep it going. One of the things that we did during the COVID crisis is we supplied gas to Barbados, and in Barbados, they make their own cans. The only thing they buy are the caps and the valves. And they took our gas and made it into sanitizing spray. So we were very instrumental in that. And one of our customers, Formulated Solutions, over in Largo, Florida, we sell quite a bit of gas to them. They do a lot of healthcare products. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of J&J. They are now looking at Formulated Solutions to do their bottling for them. And that would be a big bump in the arm for Florida. Johnson & Johnson's a very big company. I've done business with Johnson & Johnson for 30 years. I can just go on and on and on, but my memory's starting to fail me, especially when I'm nervous. But the gases that we used when I first started, 1987, we were using Freon. And Freon was used for inhalers, and they were used for blowing agents, where your foam, that's like Genpact. Genpact, they made the styrofoam clamshell, the food containers. COVID killed them. There was no business in Florida, and they were shipping most of their stuff to a different location. So they ended up having to leave. And when they left all these good employees behind. There were several good employees that I knew for many years that now have scattered, and I have no idea where they're at. Good men, electricians, and people that worked the floor, and people worked in freight, and a lot of them have now scattered to Texas and different places. So it was important to me to hire local, and for more than one reason, because I'm here to stay. And when I moved from Okeechobee, I was going to do this plant there. I bought a house there. I moved up here. I bought a house here, and then I sold the house there. So my wife and I are very happy with this location. So you'll probably see me again some other day. I don't know if there's any other questions that I can
Yeah, just kind of a follow-up on that one. All your product is trucked in and trucked out, it's not pipelined, is that correct?
No, actually what happens to us, our home office is pipelined through Mobil Oil, and they have a 16-inch pipeline that goes all the way across Illinois, and they service our high purity butane and high purity propane. In Florida, we don't have that opportunity, so what we will do is we will bring all of our raw material in by rail, and a lot of that rail comes from all over different country, all over different areas of the country. But some of our pre-blended gas comes out of our home office in Channahon, and it is just gigantic. It looks like it looks like a refinery, because it is a refinery, and they have multiple fractionation towers and all kinds of different systems that they use to. They hydrogenate gas. They hydrogenate the propane. They hydrogenate the butane, and basically they inject hydrogen into it to increase the purity level of it. So that was one of the few things way back when we were back in the 90s, 80s and 90s. They decided that they needed to upgrade our system because we had two other competitors. Well, we ended up with just one competitor now, and that's the AeroPress. And you used to see the AeroPress trucks go to Genpack, and they came out of Shreveport. So to get this gas, the closest competitor is Shreveport, Louisiana. So we have an advantage over all the other competitors, or soon-to-be competitors, because we're located right here in Florida. I have several other customers here in Florida, one up in Jacksonville, one or two down in Miami, and then obviously we have the ones over on the east side, or I'm sorry, the west side of the coast. There's a possibility there may be a couple more customers coming online soon too. One of the things that I've been hearing is that Florida, because the way we handled the COVID and the way we handled, we pushed right through it, and we showed a lot of integrity and a lot of strength. I think you're going to be starting to see some more industry coming this way. People don't realize how hot it is down here, but they really like our attitude and they like our strength. And the strength part of it is we stick together. I actually had one of my employees die. He was going to be my plant manager, and my title is project engineer. This was at the beginning of the COVID, and he lived in Okeechobee, and the man was 50, overweight, had kidney problems, and he died of kidney failure. And we all thought, oh my God, he died of COVID. So it was immediately, everybody armed up and, did our thing and cleaned out everything, and come to find out he died because he had kidney failure. But it was frightening for everybody. And because our home office is up north, all they would do is send down more spray and more masks, and more, ways to make us nervous. So we decided as a team, after Jim died, then I started putting together the new team, and it just so happens that Genpack went out of business. So that's where I ended up with most of my new team members. I foresee, in the future, maybe 4 or 5 guys working there. Right now, including myself, there's 4. So I'm thinking that, there may be another additional 3 or 4 come online for us. It's very possible we may do a 2-shift. One of the restrictions we have is the railroad, and the railroad is CSX. I've done some pretty good work with them. I'm now starting to get them to respond back to me now, and that's like the act of God, because the railroad has their own rules. So we got they're putting some new track out there. One of my neighbors is putting some new track in there. There's some additional track that's can be used, and there's also a company out there that's wanting to do rail spotting, which would actually take some of that stress off of CSX. Most of our cars end up down in Okeechobee. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to build my plant in Okeechobee. They had lots of land, they had lots of tracks, and they had lots of money, and they they didn't need diversified money, and that's how we ended up here, because Sebring does need diversified money. Sebring needs diversified taxes, and with this little program that Bob and I are trying to work out, you know, that takes care of some of your costs. You know, originally I thought we could just take care of the maintenance on the grounds, but you know, I was basically told that no, we have to have some kind of cash exchange. So what I did was I took the amount of money we're paying right now, and I kind of worked that with Steve, and we kind of come up with a number which is suitable for both of for the Sebring Airport. Actually, Sebring Airport's not involved in it at all, but for the city of Sebring and for Diversified CPC. Mike Willingham has been absolutely fantastic with me. I can't say enough good things about Mike. I know he has a reputation of being a shrewd, tough businessman, but he's got a good ear, and he listens to me when I ask him, you know, hey, Mike, can I do this, or Mike, can I do that? And he's like, okay, Bob, sure, let's work this out. So, you know, I'm very happy with what we got there.
So, Bob, can we get Mr. Bogus back up here
Yes,
to answer a few
yes.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I have a question. 25 years is a long time. In your perception, is there any way that we're going to need that property during that time frame?
Mark,
And-
we've already been approached by maybe a business that wants to go in out there at the airport. That's gonna require a lot of water and a lot of sewage treatment. I don't think the property that's out there is large enough to expand the plant to the size it would need to be. So it seems to me like what we would need to do is make the interconnection, which we have basically told the airport we would do whenever it became financially feasible to
Mhm.
do so. But I think that we're looking at a large customer that may or may not come in. We probably would have to interconnect to treat that sewage at our main treatment plant.
Okay, so you're saying no, you don't see a future use for that property?
I don't think there's enough property for us to really expand enough that in order to take care of the demand that this one company is saying they would,
Mhm.
would, you know, require.
Okay.
So for that reason, I guess, you know, probably doesn't make sense to expand
Okay.
the plant.
Yep. Well, I kind of like the idea. I do think that we should maybe have a clause in there to raise the rent periodically. You know, an escalator that would be appropriate. So that's, oh, thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other comments from council? Any comments from the public? Okay.
Is it really only 7,600 square feet? That's only like 30 feet by 200
Yeah, we kinda, I did an aerial, that's an attachment there, but
Yeah,
that's
we got it.
basically what we're talking about.
that just seems like a lot, kind of small piece of property to have
Yeah.
a parking lot.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's no other space though. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it.
No.
Hey, Bob, if you do have to expand that plant out there for a new customer, where are you gonna do that at then, if that's not a big enough area?
Well, Charlie, I don't think we would expand anything out there. What we would do is just simply tie it in. We'd have to build a force main,
Uh-huh.
basically accept the sewage. We'd have to pump it from the airport to our main treatment plant on Cemetery Road. Okay, that's a long way, so that's an expensive pipeline. That's the reason why we haven't done it, or haven't really proposed doing it. Well, there hasn't been a need for it, and you're talking about a lot of money, so it's kind of, and the plant runs fine, the way it is right now, it's meeting the demand out there, you know,
Yeah.
no problem, but it's limited in size because of the way it was built and the amount of property that's available. And we're getting rid of the effluent through a spray field. We don't have spray fields anywhere else but out there. So we don't have perk ponds, and the reason why we don't have perk ponds, there's no place to put one. So they had to spray the cow pasture that they have out there.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like there was no motion here required. It's just whatever we feel like as council. We want to tell them to move forward with a contract and.
Well, I think we need to make a motion though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably should. I just
Yeah,
have
make a
one
motion
last
to-
question. I want to
Okay.
make sure we get this response on the record. This is strictly and exclusively for the parking of tanker trailers only, correct?
Yes, that's all we do.
No storage, no tanks, sitting on cradles or any of that. This is strictly mobile. Strictly mobile is what he said. Okay.
Okay.
We have opportunity to go over 87 across the canal and get some of that land over there when we expand.
No, you answered the question, that's fine. You wanna make a motion?
Well, you-
Mark, it looked like you
Sure.
were ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve or accept this proposal based on, I guess it's $310 a month right now, with an escalating clause determined by our attorney, for Diversified CPC to sublease this property from us
For a duration
for,
of
for 25 years.
25 years, and how often do we want to include in that motion to take a look at renegotiating the price?
He's talking about an escalation clause. that's
An
automatic.
escalation
It's
clause
automatic
built into the
go up.
contract?
So every year it's gonna go up a little bit.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. No further discussions. Madam Clerk?
Bettman,
Yes?
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
I just want to clarify the $310 a month. The way it's written here is $250 a month, and
Plus
we're
lawn
currently spending $60 a month in mowing.
But
Oh.
They're gonna do
Yeah,
Mowing.
they'll do the mowing. So
Yeah,
we're
the-
getting, we're getting $250 less paying our guy to
the
mow it.
savings.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right, business from the audience. Any business from the audience?
Thanks.
Okay, we take it one at a time. Okay. All right, we'll move on then to city attorney's business.
Okay, we have proposed ordinance 1465, amending subsection 26-171-4 of the Code of Ordinances, requiring a boundary survey as a condition to obtaining a fence or wall permit. And this is the, I believe, the second reading, isn't it?
Yes.
Want me to read the title? An ordinance amending section 26-171-4 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring by requiring a boundary survey as a condition to obtaining a fence or wall permit, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Any discussion here?
Yes, actually, since our last meeting, I've given considerable thought to this. I've talked to numerous people regarding this, and I know it's our second reading. However, I would, as I brought up at the last meeting, would really like to make the distinction between a fence and a wall. I support Charlie's thought pattern on this completely. I understand the burden that it would cost both homeowners, purveyors, both retail, wholesale, and all the way up and down the line, and making the requirement for a survey. And what I'd like to do is to reiterate a position that I think might be in the best interest of all of us. I would like to see that if let's call it a structure, a wall, I don't care what it's made out of, but if it's sitting on a foundation, if you will, which all block walls would, and Mark, I'm looking for you to make sure
I'm listening to
that
you.
I'm
and
saying this correctly.
Yes,
That definitely needs a survey. I can't see that any other way, because that's not something where you have an encroachment, if you will, with your next door neighbor. They want to make an issue out of it. You can't just dig up the post, pull the chain link off, move it in a foot, and go about your business. That can be done, I hope, fairly easily. I see Ms. Brooker out in the audience. Is that correct? I don't think you can do that with the permanent structure like a wall. So I'd like to split this baby, if you would, and maybe rewrite it just to include a permanent structure or wall, however that would be best described by the city attorney.
Yep.
And not include such things as chain link fences or any other fences that can be easily moved. That's my current and final position.
Okay, well, so I also have been thinking about it, and I'm in agreement pretty much with what you're saying. Although there are fences with posts that have concrete foundations, so
Right.
there is that issue. But I spoke to Ms. Brooker also today and others, and she had a lot of good stuff to say, and I'm acquiescing on my thought process. I think it's probably not the right thing to do to require a survey for a fence. Having said that, maybe we should have her come up here and speak to us.
Well, for the record, I did not speak to Mrs. Brooker today, nor any other retail
Yeah.
fence company. I really did this all by myself.
Well, good, that's good. Good for you.
But I did talk to several citizens.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get their perception on that.
Mhm.
And I looked to my neighbors, I looked to myself, and that's the conclusion I came
Yeah,
up with.
yeah.
So anyhow, it is nice to see you, Mrs. Brooker.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you. You all have a copy of my notes, so when I start stuttering, you can put words in my mouth, okay? I'll just basically read this so the audience can hear what I had to say. The responsible contractor is going to require survey pins be located prior to installing fence. There's a couple of ways to do that. If you've recently had a survey, possibly the survey stakes are still there and the lath stakes are still there pointing to those pins. If not, then you can locate the survey pins with a shovel or a metal detector and confirm that the measurements are correct, that you haven't located an offset pin somewhere. Confirm the measurements with the GIS map on the property appraiser's site, and that can be done by the homeowner or the contractor. If a survey is required, there's a fee involved. Just to locate the pins, to have the surveyor come out and flag the pins on a small, regular, rectangular lot in a good area, starts at $300. For a boundary survey only, without any structures located on it, that's a piece of paper with a rectangle and some measurements on it,
Double.
starts at $400. We are constantly working against unlicensed, uninsured contractors, or people, okay, not necessarily contractors, who don't pull permits. So if we are apples to apples on a price for a fence, we are now a minimum of $50 for the minimum permit fee, plus this survey fee apart. So if the homeowner doesn't care about having it done by a professional and calls this unlicensed person, you know they're gonna get the job, because we are going to be at least $350 apart. Homeowners who install their own fences don't always pull permits either. So if or when they're caught, will they have to pull a permit? Will they have to get a survey? Will that be enforced? What if they don't get a survey? Will they have to be required to remove their fence? And just because a survey is required does not mean the fence is going to be installed on the property. I have a piece of paper with a survey on it. I've got to actually physically go out in the yard and put it in the right place. Not me, but my crew. Is the inspector going to go out after that fence is put in, find those same pins, run a string, and make sure that we're set in on the property a little bit? How about the retired couple who only needs a 15 by 20 by 15 area in their backyard, and they're way away from their property line? Are they gonna have to have a survey if you require that? We're not even near the property line, and this happens a lot. They just need a dog run. Will they have to have a survey? The licensed contractor who is following the rules is going to be the one who is hurt if surveys are required for a fence. It's the property owner's responsibility to prove their property lines, and it's the contractor's responsibility to put the fence on that property. I feel the ordinance should not be passed to include a fence just because somebody did it wrong and the majority are doing it right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you.
I have a question for the building inspector. Mr. Griffin, very quickly, when an applicant comes in now to have a license, to pick up the license, they bring you a little piece of paper, they show you the two corners or wherever the fence is going to be, the distance in between, you take a look at it, said, looks good. Do we even go out and inspect that and look for those corners once the fence is erected?
So the permits are issued more via zoning than the building department. The
Correct.
Florida Building Code doesn't have a provision for fencing.
Right.
We do require them to provide us a sketch of some sort and minimal details. When we go to do the inspection, it's always ideal if we can see pins. You know, most of them
I didn't
have-
catch that last part.
It would be ideal if we could see the pins. Typically, they're flagged, the corner,
Right.
whatever corner monument there is. Some are concrete monuments, some are rebar.
Yeah.
It varies, but,
But you may not always see it, because it might be a pin that's stuck down into the sod, looks good, you look down the line, you go, looks good, and we're all set, right?
Right.
Okay, that's my case.
So I haven't, in the few years that I've been here, I haven't had any conflicts arise or that have been brought to my attention. You know, ideally, people will use their pins and find them. The problem we have with just requiring surveys and not requiring the corners to be flagged or marked is somebody bringing a 20-year-old survey and have no idea where their pins are, and they brought in a survey, they met that part of it, but they're not actually finding the corners.
So a wall is what's your perception on a,
Well, a wall's gonna have a structural foundation, that's gonna
Right.
require
Mhm.
engineering
and that would
drawings.
become for you, before
That
you
would
as
come to me,
opposed to
yes,
zoning?
I would review that,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I would issue a.
Okay.
a
I'm
formal
comfortable with
building
that.
permit on
Yeah,
it.
okay, cool,
So if that's the delineating factor,
Yeah.
that's probably ideal.
sounds good.
Well, I also would have to say that I agree with the wall concept. And we're talking about a lot more money on the wall. And so having a survey and making sure that wall is in the right place, I have no problem with that. The fence, though, I appreciate you guys, doing a little investigation and talking around and coming up with this, because, you know, if you have a 3-year-old survey and you know where your corner markers are, you know, to me, it's kind of a little bit, unnecessary to go spend another $300 or $400 for a new survey that shows your boundaries when you know where they're at.
Right.
So, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Mr. President, how do we either table or rescind this ordinance that we have passed on first reading and
Table till.
table it and then redo it as the
revise it.
wall with the structure and all of that? Correct?
And do you want to say a current survey or within a certain number of years? Like he's right, that if somebody comes in with a 25-year survey, the old survey, you may or may not be able to find corners.
Or could we word it in such a way to where a survey or recognizable pins? Because
I need to be able to identify the corners. However they make those corners identifiable, we're fine. If they can provide a survey and it shows the distances, you know, it's a little extra legwork, but we can see that. The wall would also have to be set inside those pins. You couldn't set it right on the property line unless they had a joint permit with their neighbor.
Right.
Every addition, any kind of structure has to have a survey, setbacks and all those things, and they have to be accurate, so,
Right, but if you have the
Which
pins
then
already, I
the
guess is what I'm
flagging.
saying.
Right,
Then
they
that's, can we do it with just the pins? If the pins are in place already,
Or what, if you say you have to have a current survey, then the surveyor will flag those corners.
right,
Or-
but I'm just.
well, but I've done permitting with surveys that are old, but we've made sure the pins are there.
Right,
And there is that occasion where the pins aren't there, that happens occasionally
then
as
they
well.
may need to, so either, what I'm asking is, can we do it with pins or a current survey, meaning maybe 5 years or less or something like that?
I'm not sure the building department will go for it without a survey when you're building a structure. I know they won't for anything else.
Even if the pins are visible? And I'm just asking.
Well, not the city, not the city or the county, as far as I know.
My preference would be to have a survey. It doesn't matter how old it is, so long as the pins are
Okay,
identifiable.
so
but
no
I
age
really
limit on the
need to
survey if
provide-
you
Yeah.
have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, Carl Hoagland for the record. With the idea of not having a survey for a fence, which I agree with, would there be a way to stipulate in the ordinance that any dispute that's brought up is paid for by the installing party? If my neighbor installs a fence on my property, I shouldn't come out of pocket to have to defend my property line. The installing party should have to pay for that resolution.
I love it. Well, that makes sense.
Is that a kind of a legal issue, or is
That is a
Becomes
legal
civil
issue.
issue, doesn't it?
Can you put
Yeah,
a civil
I think-
issue in an ordinance?
The property owner, I mean, the person who put the fence in can always go back on the contractor if the contractor put it in the wrong place,
Or the neighbor.
or the neighbor.
My concern is that it's installed intentionally in the wrong place, and now I'm gonna have to defend myself for my property. And it shouldn't be my fight to bear, it should be the installing party or contractor's position to.
You're talking about the fence was put over into your property?
Yes.
Well, you have a right to make them move it.
But he
Sure,
would have to
that's
get
gonna
a
come as
survey
the
to make it
result of
happen.
a court order. I'm gonna now pay for the survey. I'm gonna now have to have a filing fee to take them to court. I'm now gonna
you
have
can
to have
make-
all the burden of proving this because we don't have a survey requirement in place. It seems like an unfair burden on the victim, for lack of a better term.
But then on the other hand, let me just bring this up, if your neighbor puts a fence up, you know it's probably on his property, but you're gonna claim it's on your property, then he still has to go pay the permit.
Should be the prevailing.
Cause you didn't like the fence.
I mean, do you,
I don't
guess
think
this
we wanna
is a-
get into
this is kind of a law
liability.
question.
That's a liability question.
Well,
for
but
the
it's not a law
contractor.
question if you require the survey. Now it's off the table, this dispute will never happen.
Well, it still is, if
Requiring
they
a
still put
survey
it on the
doesn't-
other property.
Requiring a survey
Even
doesn't
with the
mean they're
survey.
gonna put it on the line.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Most fence people
They
will
could
tell
still
you
put
they'll
it on
put a
your
6.
property and you still have the same problem.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So let's
But
say the neighbor next door to Mr. Hoagland actually places a fence on his property, not on theirs, not on the line, on his property. Does he now either own that fence or have the right to have it removed? So he doesn't want it there,
You're talking about if somebody puts it on.
on his property.
Mr. Hoagland's Chief's property?
Yeah,
Yeah, he can move it.
there you go.
Again, it's my burden to do so.
Yeah.
But then he
That's my
can-
only
Yeah.
thought.
Well, do you have
Yeah, and
a
it becomes a
solution to
civil
this
matter.
dilemma?
My suggestion would be if there's a way to stipulate in an ordinance that that conflict resolution comes on behalf of the installing party. They pay for whatever arbitration would have to take place, they pay for court proceedings, or they pay attorney fees if they lose.
But then the city's gonna have to enforce that.
Don't we have to enforce it anyway?
No. No, the city doesn't have to enforce somebody putting something in improper place.
Even if we permit it wrong.
But if you permit it wrong, yeah.
How do we know what we're permitting if there's no survey? Or visible survey stakes?
Well, they don't go out and measure the fence anyhow, Carl.
And you do have their sketch.
They don't
of
go
what
out there and
they said
measure
they
it
were
now.
gonna do, which is to put it on their own property, and if they do something other than what they said they're gonna do, then they would be liable, and not the city.
They're liable as the result of a judgment to then have it removed at your burden. The only way that fence is going anywhere is if you get a court order to have it removed.
Well, the city ought
Well, if
not
it's
to
on
be
your property, you
the
can
party
remove it.
that's gonna jump in and bring a lawsuit against those people to move them if they make the mistake. The city doesn't need to get in these fight between neighbors.
No, my thought is if it's permitted correctly, if it's inspected correctly, if it's done all up front, if it's preempted, we don't end up with a Curry Street. You end up with a properly permitted, installed, and inspected fence. If we're gonna skip all those steps
The
because
law-
they have a sketch,
If the building inspector doesn't do their job, the city is not responsible for the damage. That's the law in Florida. If somebody out here doesn't like what a building inspector told them to do, and they wanna complain about it, the city is not responsible for the administrative efforts of the building inspector, if he did it wrong. And I don't think we wanna get them to being responsible.
but isn't that the permitting process?
Right.
No. The permitting part is not to make sure that the fence is put in the appropriate place. It's permitted for the appropriate place. You go out, do you even go out and inspect it?
We do, but the onus is on the owner.
Yeah. But I think, Carl, in a more reasonable fashion, you're trying to ask us to put a burden on 1,000 people for the one guy that might make a mistake. And I just don't think it's fair to the 1,000 people to pay that $400 when, and.
No, I'm not agreeing that we should have to have a survey. I'm
Okay.
wondering if there was an ability in the ordinance for conflict or dispute resolution to fall on the shoulders of the installing party. So if there's a conflict between neighbors, it's not the victim neighbor that has to front all the funds, file the court,
Right.
and
Well,
do
I'm
everything
not
to
an
resolve the
attorney,
issue.
but let me suggest
court
this,
does
that
that.
if you sue somebody and you come out as the winner because they did put a fence on your property, you can also sue for all your costs.
Yeah.
Would
you
that
get your
be-
Sure,
attorney's
and
fees
recover
on
your costs on that.
But why should I have to do all that for a fence that was installed on my property?
You complain when you see them putting it over on your property, you go immediately call the city and say, they're putting it on my property.
And there's also gonna be conflicts, and I'm gonna use a real specific example. When I built my house in 2002 or 3, unbeknownst to me, and on the survey, it showed that the edge of my driveway was my property line. Until the previous owner next door had sold his property, they had to do a survey, and it showed that there was a 2-inch encroachment of my driveway onto their property. So somebody missed it by this much, somewhere from front to back. So he brought it to my attention. And I said, well, you already paid for the survey. Why don't we split the baby on this one, since it's the most recent survey, if you will, plus you want to get along with your neighbor. And we brought in a third party, if you will, survey company. They came, surveyed it, said, yep, and what we'll do is we'll redraw it to give Mr. Detman 2 inches from front to back. And I said, how much do you want for that square footage? I mean, we can figure that out. That's all worked out on a calculator. He says, nothing, I just don't need that encroachment anymore. So he paid for half of that survey, I paid for the other half. The driveway's still there, because I told him right off the bat, I'm not removing the driveway, by the way, so, you know, there was gonna be a whole lot of negotiation, but it worked out very well. That cost me $300. Cost him $300. So, sometimes, you know, you gotta take a bite of that pie.
Just prove my point.
Yeah,
Yes,
but,
he
yeah,
did.
but,
Yes.
but every once in a great while that happens. That happened 13 years after I moved in there. Nothing's perfect, I guess.
All right, we've gone over this quite a bit. Is there any discussion, any comments from the audience on this?
Mr. Swain, I have a question. Since this is the second reading, is the ordinance gonna be changed significantly so that we can maybe vote on this ordinance to not pass it and then be
You
re-advertised?
can do it either way you want to. You can simply vote to table, and we'll revise it.
I just felt like maybe it was gonna be revised so much that maybe I would need to re-advertise it by a new title,
If
removing all
it's
that
gonna be
language.
revised,
It's gonna be cut in half, it's gonna be separated between fences and walls, so we probably should table it.
I like that.
Okay, so the fence part is gonna still stay in there, just gonna be reworded in the body of the language of the ordinance, is that what you're telling me?
The wall
The
part.
fence
It's,
part won't,
it's
just
all,
the
it's
wall.
gonna be
Not the
completely
fence.
rewritten.
I understand that, that's why I was saying, why don't we get
the
rid
only
of?
thing you're advertising is that it'll be, the advertisement will be just like it is now, except it will talk about
Well, if we table
a
it, I don't have to
survey and condition
re-advertise
for
it.
obtaining a fence permit.
But that's what I'm saying, if we table it, then I don't re-advertise it.
It doesn't cost us any money then if we
That's
just
what I'm
table
So I
it.
won't be re-advertising the new
Right.
title.
Right, just table it.
That
That's all
sounds
I-
good.
So we're
I
good.
make a motion that we table this.
Second.
There you go. All those in favor? Nope.
Call the roll.
Call the roll. I was moving this along, wasn't I?
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Lorenz.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, now more discussion.
Ah, yeah, that sounds pretty good. All right, item 13A, results of market interest for the City Hall property. Scott?
Council, as I believe you all are aware, there was no interest in the City Hall parcel here. Lisa Osha advertised or did a solicitation. She did it on vendor registry, Chamber of Commerce, Highlands Association Realtors, and we did not receive any solicitation for it at all. So we're looking to see how you all might want to proceed. David Lydell, Chair of the CRA, is here to kind of discuss the CRA's viewpoint and I think that may or may not have an impact upon what you may or may not want to do with this property, because he's got some information from his board from the perspective of what they want to do on North Ridgewood with the Nansasui property and the old bank building property. So I'd like to invite him up to speak to that, and then we can get into the discussion about where we go from here.
Good evening, David Liddell, Chair of the Sebring CRA. At our last CRA meeting, I asked my board to give me some direction as far as what they thought the future use of the old Wachovia building should be, and to prioritize the Nansasui project with the Wachovia property. So particularly, the question was, does the CRA board want to see City Hall move to the Wachovia building? And if the answer is yes, how long are you willing to wait and hold out for that to happen? The second question is, if the Nansasui property is going in and raises a density question, what's your priority? So particularly if we have a parking problem, we can solve the parking problem, but it conflicts with potential future use of City Hall. Our board is prioritizing the Nansasui project over all other projects. So it was proposed that perhaps we could do both, have City Hall in the Wachovia building and do the Nansasui project, and perhaps construct like a parking garage behind the Nansasui and that city parking lot. That would not be a CRA project. That's bigger than our checkbook goes. But if it's not possible to solve the parking issue other than by taking down the Nansasui building and turning that into kind of a recreational space with additional parking to take some of the burden of the parking issues on North Ridgewood off, we would be willing to move in that direction. So our question to council tonight was to find out how serious are you about wanting to move City Hall and what that timeline might look like, and do you foresee a density issue on North Ridgewood if we were to go forward with the Nansasui project as it's been presented to you?
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot, yeah.
Well,
That's-
so I'll start.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'm first in line, right?
Sure.
It's either you or me.
I don't have any desire to move City Hall there. I know this is not a perfect space, but it's paid for. And I do think that it would be appropriate to have parking for the Nansasui project somewhere on that location. I also think it ought to be a priority of the CRA to do that, to bring that amount of people living in the downtown area, which will just spur growth in every possible way. And I'm really thrilled about it. So that's how I stand.
Okay. You want to go next, or?
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth, Mark. I actually looked a little bit further down the line, which I think I'll just reserve for another meeting, as far as the viability of this current City Hall. Kind of is based on the fact that if we're about to spend $2 million or thereabouts on the building at the old Wachovia Bank, we could put a quarter of an eighth into this building here to make it whatever you need it to be, whether it be a new roof or an air conditioning system, a handler system, or whatever it may be. But I support the idea of keeping City Hall here, also finding out if the footprint here, if the foundation on this, somewhere down the line, we've got to get an engineer's report, so that if we look maybe 10 or 15 years down the line, we want to put a second story on this, or if we want to expand, we have the property to do that. So with that, I echo your sentiments, and I'm not interested in spending $2 million, and I hope that it doesn't cost you too much to knock it down and make a beautiful parking lot out of it, but so be it.
Park and parking lot.
Correct.
Right, which I love that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of voice my opinion here in the regards, starting backwards on the Nansasui project. I do think it needs more parking. 30 parking places for 50 apartments just isn't gonna do it. There is a parking lot behind it that the city owns, and I think that has 40-some parking places. But if we were to give that up for the Nansasui, then that's 40 less parking places for the city. Unless we did City Hall at the old Wachovia building, which would gain us the parking places for the public to use, and I'm gonna say during the daytime, but also special events, which is generally at weekends, which the city would not be using those parking places in general on the weekends. And that's if we give up the parking lot behind the old Nancessory. I know that that's a priority to you guys, I understand that. Doing the numbers and understanding real estate a little bit, I'm gonna say that if we were to redo that building, our best estimate right now is somewhere less than $2 million. This property here, in my opinion, is worth at least $1 million. So we would have a net effect of spending $1 million there. If we do, 10 years down the road, build a new city hall here, let's just say I'm gonna use the old Burger King concept, you build it next door, and then you tear this one down and make a parking lot. That way you can use this one while you're building that one. That's gonna be in excess of $1 million. I can guarantee that, especially if it's 10 years down the road. And right now, building cost is between $125 and $150 a foot, maybe all the way up to $200, depending on what you're doing. If you were to put a 10,000 square foot building next door here, 10,000 square foot, which is just about the same size as this, maybe a slight different configuration, you know, you can do the math. At $200 per square foot, you're looking at $2 million and no money on the backside. So all that being said, I think it would be a great thing to have City Hall over there in that Wachovia Bank, the old Wachovia Bank building. Even though we don't have a guaranteed purchaser for this, I do think that we would get at least $1 million for it. We can use this one while we're renovating that one, and we can put this on the free market. It would greatly surprise me if we don't get at least $1 million for it. I would tell you that I'm almost personally willing to do that myself. I can't really do that because it's a conflict, because I think I could sell it for $1.5 million in a few years and make some money. But that's just my personal opinion on that. I obviously can't do it. But I do think the city can get $1 million for this building when the time comes in 1 to 2 years, and it's gonna take us that long to renovate that building if we were to do it. So in my opinion, I think that we could do that over there and possibly give up the parking lot behind the old Nancessory and rent it out or sell it to the people, or at least part of it, maybe not the whole thing entirely. And then still, we would be adding some parking places behind what is the Wachovia Bank building now. So I know that I've been very reluctant in the past. I wanted to get some kind of guarantee on this building and getting somewhere in the neighborhood of the $1 million for it. But I'm fairly well convinced with real estate prices going the way they are, in the next year to 2 years, this is gonna be well worth $1 million. And I certainly would make anything contingent upon us selling this at the appropriate point instead of leasing out for $1 a year to somebody.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Mayor, would you like
Well,
to
my
say
opinion?
something? Absolutely.
We want to hear
I
from the
think
mayor.
you all know my opinion. I
Yeah,
think-
we already know yours.
I still believe that area for City Hall would be a plus for the city itself. I believe the Nancessory, I mean, we've got a conundrum here as far as the density issue and the number of parking. We've got some businesses that do use that parking lot behind the Nancessory already. So now we just cut off access to that. So we've got to figure out, is that 50 units too much for that piece of property? And if not, how do we correct that? But I also still think that the presence of City Hall downtown it makes a statement. That building does make a statement. It can be brought back to life and to really be part of downtown. I think one of the problems we have here, we said the results of market interest for City Hall property were none. But we didn't offer it for sale.
Right.
We offered to the realtors to say, hey, what can you do with this property? Basically is what that said. Well, a realtor's gonna look at that and say, I'm not gonna spend my time telling you what I can do with this if I don't have a contract to sell it there. So that RFI or whatever we put out, I don't think was the way we put that out and instructed staff to do it, was a proper way to do it to get a good interest in what this property is worth. I agree with Charlie. I think this property is worth $1 million. I think the county will probably reassess this at some point in time to say, hey, they're adding another pod to the jail. They already use our back parking lot for their squad cars. They're out of room. If this county keeps growing, that county's gonna need space. So I'm gonna partner with Charlie at $500,000 apiece and sell it to the county in 5 years for $2 million, not $1.5 million. So, but I really think and I think it's a viable piece of property from that standpoint, but I really still think that the amount of money that we end up putting into that structure, it's 3-story concrete, full concrete structure. You're never gonna replace it for what, especially what CRA bought it for, but for what you can rehab to build that. There's no way you could not build that building for $2 million right now.
That's for sure.
So, and, you know, we don't have a set price on that, but I'm still all for City Hall being downtown. I think the presence of City Hall downtown is important, and especially as we grow.
You're up.
Yeah, just because you're the president doesn't mean you can sit there quiet.
Yeah, that's right. Like, okay, folks, you heard it.
That's right.
Time to go home.
Yeah, I'm out of here. No, I think that, well, look, I'm conflicted over it because I agree downtown would be. I don't know how much really it'll cost us to rehab that and make it ADA accessible and having another elevator. It's going to cost some money to do that. Of course, we're here. I had said that it may be sometime in the future that we might want to rebuild a city hall here and to our specifications, what we need. You know, you go in the offices back there, people are pretty cramped. Right
Well,
now.
there's empty offices
Yeah.
over here. There's
Yeah,
a pile of them.
That's a conference room, and should have a conference room where we could come in and talk and have some privacy and talk to people. But again, the age of the building, you know, design, where are we going as a city, and what do we want, image we want to project? Those kinds of things come into mind. If we can do the City Hall downtown, I would not object to that myself. I mean, that's an idea that I just look at the building, and yeah, we couldn't build it again for what we probably could rehab it, but I hope that we can fit what our offices need to be and make it work there, because we're going into an existing structure rather than building our own to our own specifications. But I would not object trying to review going downtown again. Selling this property was a little disappointing, but you made the point that it might not have been what we needed to do with it, that no one was interested here. I can't believe that right here in the hub of government.
Well,
We never offered it for sale.
Yeah, so I would agree with the mayor that I do believe that the county is gonna have second thoughts on this, because it really makes sense for them.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm still not a proponent of this.
Yeah.
You going back to what Mr. Lydell had mentioned earlier, it's a 50-unit complex. The mayor talked, if I understood correctly, that maybe if they scale that back, but they also said to you, to scale that back would not be worth it for them to do it. Is that correct?
Correct,
Yeah,
we've had more than one developer.
So that's the bottom line on that. It's
It's a
either that
50 unit
50 units,
development.
32 spots, and we either find them another parking place in there. The other thing is, if this building is worth $1 million now, it'll be $1.5 million in 5 years, hypothetically, and $2 million in 10 years. So we're still talking, if you want to call proportionately, the same amount of money. Right now, building costs are way through the ceiling. Lumber's come down a little bit. I don't know if concrete has, but we're not back where we were a year ago.
We're never gonna be back there.
No, and we never will, but we're not gonna be 2 and 3 times where we
Right.
were for the last 6 months or thereabouts.
Yes, sir.
So my thoughts are, and to add the fact that if I'm not mistaken, and Scott, correct me, the 2 million or thereabouts for the old Wachovia Bank did not include the replacement of the roof. Is that correct?
No, I think it did
It
include
did.
the replacement of the roof.
It didn't include the third floor.
I understood it didn't.
No, it did.
Okay, so we're still at the 2 million mark.
But that, how many months ago was that too?
Well, yeah, that's
So
6 months now too.
pricing, like right now, all of the purveyors that we're dealing with have 7 days on a quote,
Right.
literally, 7 days.
Yeah,
I don't think
And
we
I,
were at
I,
the-
I priced
I
out a
mean, we
garage
really
door
never-
We're
last
not
week,
at the full 2
and it
million,
went
I
up
don't believe.
$1,500 from
I
last
think
week.
we were sitting at about 1.7.
And we do need additional parking downtown, and I don't think we need to take the parking that's behind the Nancessoy and then deprive the people and the businesses on both sides and behind that the ability to park there just for the exclusive, you know what I mean, of the Nancessoy or the new clients there. So they would be within a half a block walking distance to the area where the Wachovia Bank is. So I stick with my original on that. I respect everyone's opinions on that, but I think Mark and I are kind of pretty solid on that, staying right here, hanging on to our $2 million, letting you guys go forth and do good things.
Let me ask you a couple of questions.
As a note, just real quickly to Chief Tutman's point about the parking lot and behind it, if you pay attention to that parking lot 3 or 4 days a week at least, it's 70% filled
Yep.
in the evenings. And that's due to the billiard hall that's next door.
I drove by there one evening, I think it was a Wednesday evening. More than half the parking lot was taken up, and I couldn't understand why until I understood, talking to someone, that there's a big billiard
Yes.
parlor there now, and,
Yep.
and there's a lot of people that utilize that section.
Yes.
So anyhow,
Well, let me
but
ask
that's
you-
not a determining factor altogether.
David, let me ask you that, how sure are you that the Nancessoy project's gonna move forward?
It's not done
As
yet.
sure as we are as moving, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
Okay.
We're moving forward with the conversation with that developer. We're working on the zoning issues with Central Florida Planning. I mean, we are still proceeding down that path.
Okay, but we're not sure it's really gonna go through, so this may come back again.
I don't
and
have a
if that
reason to
doesn't
think
go
it would
through-
not go
Sure.
through, but it isn't done, and we've done this enough times that I'm not gonna stand here and say that, I'll stake my name on it.
Okay, so, and then my next question is, if that does go through,
Mhm.
then to mitigate the parking dilemma, you want to use where the Wachovia building is now and not the parking lot behind there.
I don't think that the parking lot behind it is gonna solve your problem. I mean, if it's full 3 or 4 days a week,
Right.
so you have 10 extra parking spaces back there, and you're saying if we have a density issue, that we need 20 or more.
Right. Yeah, well, the point I'm getting at, I know the original plans with that, they wanted to lease that parking lot behind there.
I believe so, yes.
So you're saying that the parking lot across the street would be sufficient with the developers to use that
I think it's
instead of the one
another
behind
option.
there?
I think it's another option to consider if density's gonna be a problem.
Well, density's gonna be a problem. I'll just, all of us up here have discussed this a little bit. 30 parking places for 50 units isn't gonna work. So we gotta come up with some more parking places or less units. They say they don't wanna do less units, we need more parking places.
Correct.
So my question then is have you run it by them to have the parking lot across the street versus behind the building? And how's that gonna work with the tenants? Are they gonna like that?
Well, the parking lot that's behind the Nancessoy is a public parking lot.
It is.
So if they get there first, I think the residents get to park there. We're trying to create a place to take some of the pressure off. I mean, even if you were going to the billiard hall, it's a walk around the block to get from that Wachovia parking lot to there. It's not as convenient as right behind it, but you're taking the pressure off. I mean, it's a solution. We have places for them to park. And these are not 80-year-old, for the most part, people going to play pool. So they can walk.
Well, I don't know how my fellow council members feel on the fact of and I understand it's a public parking lot, but to approve the project eventually, we're gonna have to consider the fact that they're gonna use those parking places first, and they're gonna leave their cars there, which does hurt the businesses back there, so I got a problem with that, I'll just say, but I've had a problem with the density of the 50 units from the beginning with only 30 parking places, so. Anyway, all right. You might want to run that by them, though, and see what they think on the parking lot across the street. One other comment, Mr. Ivy has not taken a firm commitment one way or the other. I know the two of you gentlemen have. We have one council member that's not here tonight, and maybe we should wait for a final, thought on this when Mr. Carlisle's here.
Well, we're not voting on anything, are we?
Didn't
This
think
is,
so.
this is just you gauging our interest.
Right.
Yes, and
got
the
a definite
board,
maybe.
the CRA board at the last meeting, wanted to try to establish perhaps a timeline of 2 months that we could resolve what the direction of City Hall might be, and that's reasonable to you.
Well, I
guys.
guess we can't do that till our,
We have a full
till
council.
Leonard is here.
Right.
Next meeting. Maybe you could come back next meeting, David.
Oh, I can come to as many meetings as you want.
Yeah.
But, I mean, would the 2-month timeframe be, is that a reasonable amount of time, do you think, for council to make a decision on which direction they want to go?
Well, right now, it's split down the middle, it looks like. So, it's a.
We've already had it 2 years, so let's go
Yeah,
another 2
so it depends
years.
on.
That's what we're trying to
You let it deteriorate further, so.
I won't be here at the next meeting. So,
David, a sidebar.
Yes, sir.
On social media and in personal contacts that I've had,
Yes.
I've heard more often than not that they hope that the developer, should that project go through at the old Ancesui site, shows a degree of historical tenderness, if you will.
Yes.
So that maybe the parking garage being on the first level wouldn't look like a parking garage, it'd look more like the old Ancesui building, whether it be the brick, the colorture, whatever that may be. And I know you've probably heard a lot of that as well.
Yes.
You've probably read it as well. So I just wanted to emphasize that. There's a lot of people in town, including myself, who really, I embrace the historical appearance of our downtown, and it's a shame that the Ancesui had to go down and couldn't have been rehabbed in proper fashion in time. So hopefully the architects who are gonna work with your developer would take that into consideration.
We have expressed an interest that that building needs to fit in and be compatible to the historic nature of the downtown.
But even more so, look a little bit more like the Ancesui, sort of like maybe the pedestrian walkway go in through the front door, have the front, maybe the coloration of the brick or something that would, you're not gonna make everybody happy, as we all know.
Yes, we do.
But I think it'd be worth the try.
Yes.
One other comment real quick on that, on the development. If the Wachovia building's not there, that piece of property is a bigger footprint than the old Ancesui.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be more viable to use that for this development?
One of the issues that we're also facing, that we haven't talked about tonight, is that, as you're aware, we've been purchasing buildings on the Circle, and we're trying to attract other businesses there. So we're sensitive to the fact that, in the future, closing down the Circle for multiple days is not in the best interest of the businesses that we're putting down there. So we're trying to consider what other alternate locations can we have for festivals and downtown events. That's one of the appeals to, if City Hall doesn't go to the Wachovia building, that recreational park space would be available for that, in addition to hopefully the downtown waterfront as well.
that's a good thought. Mhm.
If you get to a point where you have to demolish the old Wachovia Bank building, can the CRA afford that price ticket?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we look like we've had a definite maybe up here. How about the audience? Do we have any comments from the audience that'd like to speak on this? Or have we dazzled you enough to where? I'm not getting into that.
So,
Okay.
we haven't made a decision, so.
No. Well, I'm thinking, we're all here, sitting here talking $2 million, and I'm looking at the budget that we're coming up
Well,
here.
that's tomorrow night, yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at the budget. We can borrow it, I guess, but I don't see $2 million in that budget anywhere.
No.
But that's a long-term project, and
Yeah.
I'll just say,
Sure.
that 20-year project, that's only $50,000 a year.
Mhm.
So,
Well, we'll see, and then the operation of it, it's gonna be more operating costs, but, it would be. All right, so, let's,
That's the question.
yeah, let's cut this.
okay.
We agree.
I make a
Alright.
motion that we approve and pay the bills as presented.
Oh, Linda,
Wait,
are we
wait.
bringing it back to next meeting? Is this gonna be discussed at
sorry.
next meeting?
Yeah.
I'm just asking for record and for David's, are we bringing this back at next meeting or not?
I don't think we wanna bring it at next
Next
meeting,
meeting, okay.
cause
I
next
just-
meeting might
August 3rd
be
could be
pretty
really
slim
difficult.
on the council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
We can
Okay,
vote
I
for
was
it
just gonna
then,
put it in
though.
the record.
Yeah,
that's
there you
what-
go. You'll have the numbers.
Just
So not-
take-
not
I
So-
can bring it back in the future. Who's gone?
Yeah,
Can I ask Lou for one thing, but, Mr. Ivy?
Oh, sorry.
Are y'all agreeable to the 2-month time frame to make a decision?
I think so. I
Yeah, I
think
would
we
s-
need to at
I
least
would
grow
say
a
that's
backbone and
accurate,
make a
yes.
decision within 2 months.
Hope this isn't indicative of how long it's gonna take us to make a decision,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think 2
Yeah,
months
yeah, I
myself.
would agree on that.
Yeah.
Speaking of historic structures, have you all seen the Santa Rosa?
Yes.
They've been working on it.
Man, it looks nice. I think they're gonna open up next week. Keep going like they did with the,
Cutting down trees.
they cleaned it up at least.
Did clean it up a little bit.
Maybe there's some interest out there.
Oh, goodness.
Russell's Fine got big enough, they decided it was cheaper to clean it.
14.
Probably something like that.
Oh, that's Kathy.
What is y'all's, if I may, while I'm here, have you had time to think about the old Barnett Bank building and a cultural arts center / civic center? And at some point, the CRA will need to make a decision on whether or not that's a purchase that we want to make in the future or not.
Yep.
You wanna start
Want me
again,
to start
Mark?
again?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's your first step, personally.
Okay.
You know, there needs to be a location for the entities that are currently down in the area that we're talking about renovating. So in my mind, that's step number one.
Okay?
I think we should have a cultural, like a meeting area center here for the city of Sebring. And if it's not in the initial plan down there, we need to have it, and that might be a good place for it, just off the top of your head there. Civic Center.
I kind of expressed to the CRA when I was there the other night as a liaison what my opinion was, and as you all know, I used to own that building, and it's a 32,000 square foot building. And using it as a market or a flea market, it just, you can get away with that without a lot of renovation. But if you go in and renovate that building to a cultural arts center, government use, you're gonna have a lot of money. That thing's gonna cost, and my best guesstimate would be $3 to $4 million easy to try to do that. You know, we're talking about 16,000 square feet over here at 1.6. That's 32,000 square feet. That's huge. That's huge. It's not that good of shape. I mean, it's a good, solid, rock solid building. It really is. It's concrete. It went through Hurricane Irma. It got one broken window. It's a rock solid building. But the interior of it, the wiring of it, the plumbing of it, all of that's going to have to be redone if you use it for a cultural arts center. So I just want to bring to everybody's attention, I don't know who wants to pay for that. I know the city really can't afford it. I'm not sure the CRA wants to afford it. That's a big nut to crack. That's twice or 3 times the size of the city hall over here. I see the looks over here, Mark, so.
Well, yes.
I mean, the idea's great, but it's gonna be expensive
Yeah.
if you go that route.
Yeah,
I mean, you would be opening it up, you'd be taking down walls and, not reestablishing them.
yeah.
Yeah, but,
So the work that you'd be doing.
have you
at
been
Mark
through there,
could look
Mark?
different.
Let me ask you.
I have not. I mean, I have sporadically, but
Yeah.
not with that
Yeah.
thought in mind,
Well,
you know.
take a walk through there, and, again, this isn't something we're
Yeah.
necessarily gonna make a decision on,
Yeah,
but.
I'm
you know,
sure that we could say it's a long-term project.
Yep.
It would be very long,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but,
Did you say 30,000 square feet?
32,000.
32,000. So this building is 10. One floor could be City Hall easily with expansion, right? Half again as much. And then next floor is your Civic Center, all under one roof for $2 million.
Or 3.
Listen, there's a lot of moving parts here, and, I'm glad we're talking about it. But I like the location. I don't think we should ever step back in time and not have a Civic Center. I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether we make money on it or not, we have to have a Civic Center. We're a city.
Right.
What is y'all's feelings on the Civic Center, though, now that you brought that up? Because personally, I kind of I want the waterfront to get redone,
Mhm.
but the Civic Center where it's at isn't a bad deal to me.
Well, once again, that's just another option.
So, I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
I like the Civic Center. It's a functional building and it works and it's a beautiful view, but it also blocks a view from the entire waterfront district.
Yep.
It's in the way. And in my mind, it's part of the reason that there is blight beyond that and also crime and things that we can't see. So I feel like it needs to go. With a replacement.
Yeah.
Yes, there has to be, there has to be a replacement,
Yeah.
and like I say, kinda rained on my parade when he talked about how much needed to be done to that building, cause the artist rendition, makes me feel proud that that could be our civic center. But if it could be our civic center and our city hall, and market this for the $1 million or $1.5 million, I think we come out ahead.
I think we're all gonna get, an attitude adjustment tomorrow night.
Yes, I think so too.
On the budget?
On the budget, we have a
Well-
budget workshop tomorrow night, folks.
Yeah. It sounds like you might need a workshop on this again.
Well, it's
Try
possible.
to gel where we're gonna wanna go.
Did
on
you
it.
wanna lead that?
Huh? On the city hall?
Well, on a workshop?
Yeah, on the city hall?
He's
Yeah.
gonna
Well,
bail
you're
out.
leaving, you're leaving.
Yeah, that's right.
No fair.
Yeah, I can say whatever, yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. But I just suggested that because like I'm listening to what's going on, and then my own comments were non-real definitive.
Yeah.
Because I could be either way or either place. I like,
You're flexible.
yeah, and non-decisive. Probably is more like it. But that's up to you guys.
Well, it
You
won't be
know,
next meeting then.
No.
It'll be the meeting after that,
After that.
probably.
We
That
got
will-
60 days.
Yeah.
Where they foreclose on us.
4 meetings.
Yeah.
Meeting after next, I think, is that fair,
Yeah.
reasonable?
Yeah, I'm
to
good
discuss
with
this
that.
again?
Yeah.
As long,
Be here whenever you invite me.
as long as Leonard is back, and I think he will be.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Let's look at talk about, oh, absolutely.
Bobby Lee, I'd like to address what Mr. Stewart just gave an opinion on, because I've heard the same one from Mr. Moran. Today is a day of technology, and I would imagine the chief would tell us that he could view the downtown lake area from anywhere, including a car driving by. Not let alone just, it's a police station.
Could you speak up,
Something-
Bobby?
Should I
Please.
get closer to this?
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
That'll work.
All right. Do I need to repeat that?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. It's fairly simple. In one of my lifetimes, I worked for Lucent Technologies. And we built systems like we're talking about, security system. Built a $300 million system that I was in charge of, interestingly enough. And you can build these systems in today's time, because that was 2003, 04. And everything has changed completely. There's no reason we can't have eyes on those areas that are now blighted 24 hours a day. It's a piece of cake. So to tear down the Civic Center or to tear down our 2 lovely buildings doesn't make sense from a standpoint of, well, you can't see the lake. Because all you have to do is go down to the lake to see it. And there are 3.1 acres down there. All of the buildings combined, minus the theater, because I didn't measure that, are again, less than 7% of that whole area. And yet the waterfront is 3.1. And we could have eyes and lights on every bit of that. And with today's new light bulbs, it costs a heck of a lot less than it used to cost to light up an area. And I wouldn't put a bunch of stupid palm trees down there in a grove.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. City of Sebring bills.
Sir, council needs to approve paying the bills, please.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, got a motion and a second.
Detman,
Yes.
Lorenz.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes. One more item
One
under
more.
your business.
The Florida League of Cities conference is going to be held in Orlando, August 12th to the 14th. The council needs to vote on a delegate. Mr. Ivy was signed up to go to that conference.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to withdraw that.
Yeah, so I guess it's just Mr. Carlisle, so I think y'all need to vote on
He's not here, let's get
Mr. Carlisle.
Hey,
to be a
volunteer.
voting
I
delegate.
think that's appropriate. I mean, if he's not here, he's in.
And if
I'll
he's not,
second
and if
that.
I think
he's
he
not-
did it, he did it last time, I think also.
Well, hopefully he's going to be able to.
I asked him
That's
whether or not
what he
he
said.
would do it. He said glad to.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
that's the middle of August, so
Good.
he's still planning on going. so.
Perfect.
If not, we'll, August third meeting, we'll have.
You need a motion on that one?
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion
You got
and a
two
second.